All right, let's get cooking. Welcome to the latest edition of Chin Check Sports Radio. I'm your host, JD. I want to thank you all for taking the time out to join us. And as always, we welcome any suggestions, feedback, comments, and criticisms, which improves the quality of our program, which ultimately improves your listening experience. Before we get started, we want to say Happy New Year to everyone. Thank you for your tremendous support in 2021 as we continue our journey in 2022. It has been a blast. We enjoy what we do. This is really fun for us. We enjoy that you've definitely been along for the ride. For some of our people that's been down for us and with us since day one, we cannot say thank you enough. And for those of you who are just catching on, we definitely appreciate it. Please continue to sit back, share our journey with us, and we will continue to indulge you in the topics that we enjoy talking about. And it's going to be fun to spark great debates and discussions. And at the end of the day, folks, it's really just sports. So just sit back, relax, and we are in for another exciting year and a fun 2022. And from Chin Check Radio, we wish you all nothing but blessings and happiness in this new year. On this particular episode, we wanted to talk about a few topics that we have a differing view on it than the mainstream media and even fellow sports fans like yourself, which makes us Chin Check Radio. We are not contrarian by nature. We are not the type to just want to be the sole voice of opposition or just want to think different than everybody else. But there are some things that makes us who we are, things that, quite frankly, bore our existence. The fact that we think things differently or we look at things differently than everyone else does. And a lot of times we find ourselves, when we do our broadcast, when we bring up these issues, people find themselves saying, you know what, I thought the same thing, or you know what, we felt the same way, but you guys were the ones that actually brought it to the forefront. So some topics that we wrote down, we've been thinking about, obviously things that's through the years of watching sports that we feel, well, wait a minute, let's do our show that looks at it from an unconventional view, that looks at it from a little bit differently. You can call it overrated or underrated, and you guys put your own spin on it, and by all means, give us your feedback. Number one, we think that the greatest show on turf is in fact overrated. I know, stop the presses. So people are saying, well, Chin Check, what are you talking about? Yes, the greatest show on turf, led by Kurt Warner, we feel is rather overrated in terms of the annals of a great, I'm not going to say a dynasty, but of a football era. And here's why. That team, yes, they won the Super Bowl. Barely beat a Tampa Bay Buccaneers team led by Sean King, who was a quarterback, in a very low-scoring game. And if it wasn't for a non-catch, maybe the outcome could have been different. They beat a Tennessee Titans team who everybody talks about they were 1 yard short, but it was a very competitive game against a Tennessee Titans team, which won them the Super Bowl. Okay, you guys can't take anything away from them. It was a feel-good story with Kurt Warner coming from the Arena League, Trent Green getting hurt, Dick Vermeil coaching the team with Marshall Faulk, Mike Martz, who was the offensive coordinator. So I give them all the credit in the world for winning that one Super Bowl. The next year, people forget, they lost in the wild card round to the New Orleans Saints, led by one Aaron Brooks, who was the cousin of former NFL quarterback Michael Vick. So again, the Super Bowl champions lost in the wild card game through a lot of turnovers, caused a lot of turnovers, did Kurt Warner, and he lost in the wild card game. The very next year, in 2001, they go back to the Super Bowl. Kurt Warner's named the MVP. But people forget the Super Bowl that they lost that began the rise of Tom Brady and the Patriots dynasty. They were a heavy favorite going into that game, that people tend to forget that. And even though, yes, Brady left the drive, that Adam Vinatieri kicked the game-winning field goal, but people forget they were, I believe, a 13 or 14-point favorite because, again, they were the greatest show on turf. They had Kurt Warner, again, who at the time, again, now we know what eventually Tom Brady became, so that's neither here nor there. But we're talking about at the time in 2001, Brady's first year start, Brady taking over as a starter. Kurt Warner was already established. They already had been to a Super Bowl. Kurt Warner won the MVP that season, and they lost to a team who they were the heavy favorites on by 13 or 14 points. And in 2002, Mark Bolger was a starting quarterback, and that was the end of Kurt Warner in St. Louis until he played with the New York Giants. Had some rather, I'm going to say mediocre seasons, but really got the ball rolling for Eli Manning, went to Arizona, led them to a Super Bowl. But we're talking about strictly the greatest show on turf. We feel that it's very overrated, where you only got one Super Bowl victory out of them, knocked out in the wild card round the following season, and lost in the Super Bowl to a team that they were a heavy favorite over. And then by the very next year, Mark Bolger was a new starting quarterback, and it might have had some decent season, but it was really the end of the greatest show on turf. So we don't really look at them with high regard like other people do. I know they have players in the Hall of Fame, obviously Orlando Pace and Marshall Faulk and Isaac Bruce. I believe Torrey Holt should get in to the Hall of Fame this year. But ironically, we never thought Kurt Warner was a Hall of Famer either. Yes, he had the wonderful seasons. He had the wonderful seasons in St. Louis, leading them to a Super Bowl, well, really two Super Bowls and winning one, leading the Arizona Cardinals to a Super Bowl. I know that built his Hall of Fame career, but there was a middle part of his career where he did nothing towards the tail end of his career with the St. Louis Rams, his career with the New York Giants. So we're kind of, even though he made the Hall of Fame and we're happy for him, but really didn't see him as a Hall of Famer. And I don't know if Kurt Warner got in on the first ballot, but never really saw him as a Hall of Fame type quarterback, a very good quarterback, but not necessarily a Hall of Fame quarterback. But definitely we feel that the greatest show on turf is in fact very overrated. As huge Dallas Cowboys fans, we clearly will take Emmitt Smith over Barry Sanders. Now, we have mentioned this before, and we're going to say this again. We will take Emmitt Smith over Barry Sanders any day of the week. Now, people are going to tell me Barry Sanders was a better pure running back. Nobody's arguing with that. If you're looking for excitement, if you're looking for energy, there's no question you'll take Barry Sanders for pure excitement and pure energy. The highlight reel, one of the greatest running backs of all time, where, I mean, that's not even up for debate or discussion. But when comparing the two, the common thing that you're going to hear is that Emmitt had a great offensive line. He was surrounded by other great players. That's true, and nobody's arguing that. But those Cowboys teams would not have gone as far without one Emmitt Smith. And Barry Sanders, to his credit, did have a Lomas Brown. He did have another, at the time, a wide receiver in Herman Moore, who was one of the top 5 wide receivers in football. And for Barry Sanders, for all of his brilliance, actually led the league in loss of yardage runs. Which means he was tackled a lot of times behind line of scrimmage. A lot of Barry's highlights came from those 60, 70-yard runs that Eddie happened to break at some point in the game. Now, here's a simple thing as to why Emmitt Smith, I feel, is a better all-around back than Barry Sanders. Emmitt Smith can pick up blitzes. Go look at the tape. He was excellent at picking up blitzes. He was a solid pass catcher. Out of the backfield. That's there. It is not up for debate. You can argue Barry didn't have the chance to show all that, but that was part of the Cowboys scheme at the time, where Emmitt Smith had to pick up blitzers, and he did, and he called a lot of passes out of the backfield. Now, if you really want to talk about who was more valuable to who, was the Cowboys valuable to Emmitt Smith, or was Emmitt Smith valuable to the Cowboys? And we have told this story before. Go back to the beginning of the 1993 season. The Dallas Cowboys, fresh off of a Super Bowl victory, 52-17 over the Buffalo Bills. The Dallas Cowboys are in contract negotiations with one Emmitt Smith. The Cowboys, I guess what Jerry Jones wanted to play hardball. Jerry Jones felt, should I pay Emmitt Smith all this money? So Emmitt Smith holds out. The same Dallas Cowboys team with Troy Aikman, with Michael Irvin, with Nate Newton, with Mark Stepnoski, with Eric Williams, with John Geesley, that same great one with Kevin Gogan, that same team, same guy, same team, minus Emmitt Smith, lose their first 2 games, won the Washington then Redskins, and the same Buffalo Bills team who they just crushed in the Super Bowl, they went 0-2 against those teams. Emmitt Smith comes back. So again, you take out Emmitt Smith, the Cowboys lose to the same Buffalo Bills team who had just crushed in the Super Bowl 7-8 months prior without Emmitt Smith. Emmitt Smith comes back, wins the league MVP, wins the rushing title. If it wasn't for possibly his greatest game at the New York Giants, final game of the season, playing for a playoff bye, I believe seating was on that line, and that was a great game because I remember I begged my mother to let me stay home that game, and Emmitt Smith single-handedly won that game for the Dallas Cowboys. So no knock on Barry. Barry's one of the greatest of all times. Both players are on my Chin Check Radio greatest football players of all time, or players that we grew up watching. So no knock on them, but these are some of the reasons, if you're listening slowly, why we would choose Emmitt Smith over Barry Sanders. Also, as Dallas Cowboys fans, Coach Bill Parcells, we felt he was very average as the head football coach of the Dallas Cowboys. Now, not taking anything away from the overall body of work from Coach Bill Parcells, not taking anything away from that. Yes, Cowboy fans will tell me he was brought in he did turn the team around. We're talking about a team who had 3 straight 5-11 seasons. They were in free fall. Jerry Jones had to do something. Fired Dave Campo, brought in Bill Parcells. Bill Parcells, who won 2 Super Bowls with the New York Giants, took the New England Patriots to a Super Bowl, took the New York Jets to an AFC Championship game, and really within one bad quarter, he could have taken them to a Super Bowl. So Bill Parcells came to Dallas with a reputation of turning around a bad football team, and specifically in the case of the New York Jets, a team that was 1-15, and 2 years later has them in the AFC Championship game. So Parcells was already a made man, had the instant credibility, and really throughout his tenure in Dallas, yes, he got to the playoffs 2 times, did not win a playoff game, and we feel that his tenure in Dallas was rather overrated. Not saying he wasn't a great coach, but for what he was brought in to do, to turn the team around, get them to at least a division or championship game, he failed to do so. And let's really go through his drafts. His very first draft in 2003 drafts cornerback Terrence Newman with the number 5 overall pick. Drafts center Al Johnson, round 2, number 38. Drafts Jason Witten, round 3. Drafts Brady James, round 4, out of LSU. So clearly he's drafted a cornerback who was a staple of those Cowboys teams of the the early 2000s, beginning of 2010. Jason Witten, who was a Hall of Famer, and Brady James, who was a key contributor for those Cowboys for at least about a good decade. So we will give him credit on that. Drafted another cornerback, B.J. Tucker, in round 6. Wide receiver Zuriel Smith, and offensive guard Justin Bates. Have anybody ever heard those people before we even brought them up? So out of that 2003 draft, and mind you, Parcells had complete control over drafting. It was his to do what he wanted to do. Jerry might have maybe signed the free agents, but a lot of Parcells guys came to Dallas. So in 2003, drafted a solid corner who really had a good rookie season, played awful in 2004, a future Hall of Famer, and a solid contributor on linebacker, one Brady James. Now keep in mind, even Brady James also made our Chin Check Radio all-time greatest Cowboys. In 2004, what is interesting is with the success that the 2003 team had, with Quincy Carter as the quarterback. Again, team having 3 straight 5-11 seasons. Bill Parcells coming over, leading the team to 10-6. I mean, who would have thought with Terry Glenn, were the wide receivers, well, now the late Terry Glenn, may he rest in peace. Joey Galloway were the two wide receivers, so they had a very fast offense. You had Quincy Carter. Troy Hambrick was the running back. Yes, that Troy Hambrick. In 2004, clearly the Cowboys were in the market for a running back. At the end of the 2002 season, it was Emmitt Smith's last year with the Cowboys. He has set the all-time rushing record. As Parcells comes, of course, he cuts Emmitt Smith, which I think even Emmitt saw it coming. So they went with Troy Hambrick, who was supposed to be seen as a younger version, the new running back, who was average at best. So the Cowboys clearly needed a running back to continue being in the playoffs. Again, 10-6, losing to the Carolina Panthers, who made it to the Super Bowl that year. So the Cowboys are seen in the market of really needing a running back. And by the way, in 2003, had the number 1 ranked defense in football with guys, the Dexter Coakleys and the Dat Wins. So those are guys on the team. Greg Ellis was on that team. And the Dallas Cowboys, watch to say, Bill Parcells, had Oregon State running back Steven Jackson right there in his lap at number 24. Trades out of the first round. Had Steven Jackson right there, trades out of the first round, and gets running back Julius Jones out of Notre Dame in the second round. His 2004 draft, round 2, Jacob Rogers, an offensive tackle out of USC. Round 3, Stephen Peterman, an offensive guard out of LSU. Round 4, a cornerback, Bruce Thornton out of University of Georgia. Round 5, a tight end, Sean Ryan out of Boston College. Round 7, cornerback Nate Jones out of Rutgers. Round number 7, pick number 216, Patrick Creighton out of Northwest Oklahoma State. And round 7, Jock Reeves out of Purdue. So in the 2004 draft, with the Dallas Cowboys needing a running back, in the market for a running back, and the best running back of that draft, right to them at number 24, trades out and gets Julius Jones. You maybe got 2 or 3 good seasons out of Julius Jones, and a key contributor in one, Patrick Creighton. Does anybody else remember any one of these other guys who we drafted and what impact did they made with the Dallas Cowboys? Oh, and by the way, the Bill Parcells, who cut Quincy Carter, and not saying he didn't deserve to be cut, but brings in Vinny Testaverde, and the Cowboys go 6-10. Go figure. In the 2005 draft, now, there are people who believe that Parcells wanted to damage, because again, how in the hell do you have a number 1 defense in 2003 to a defense that was just heavens awful in 2004? A lot of people felt that Parcells wanted to deconstruct that defense and build it to the 3-4 system that he likes, that he definitely employed with the New York Giants as well as the Jets and the Patriots. So again, he wasn't used to running a 4-3, but at that time, even the Cowboys endured those 3 straight 5-11 seasons. The one good thing or shining light on those teams was that the defense was actually pretty solid. Mike Zimmer, the current head coach of the Minnesota Vikings, was the defensive coordinator of those teams. So kind of put that in perspective. So now in 2005, he now has to gear up and find players to build and construct his 3-4 defense. Because at that time, the Cowboys had very fast linebackers. Again, we're talking about the Al Singletons and the Dexter Coakleys. So now we have to get bigger at linebacker to employ a 3-4 defense. So it's in the 2005 draft, Hall of Famer DeMarcus Ware at number 11. Drafts Marcus Spears at number 20 out of LSU, both in the first round. Drafts linebacker Kevin Burnett out of Tennessee in the second round. Marion Barber, the third, is drafted in the fourth round. Chris Canty is drafted in round number 4. So rounds 4, you have both Marion Barber and Chris Canty. Round number 6, you have Justin Barrio, who could not stay on the field as a safety. Rob Petiti, who got 1 good season out of Rob Petiti. And Jay Ratliff, round number 7, out of Auburn. So in the 2005 draft, you got 1 Hall of Famer, Marcus Spears, an okay contributor. A Hall of Famer in DeMarcus Ware, a okay contributor in Marcus Spears and Kevin Burnett. Now here's the thing with the Marion Barber pick. As good of a pick it was, could that pick been used as something else had he drafted Steven Jackson? Because the Cowboys, they use a 2-headed running back attack with both Julia Jones and Marion Barber. Could that problem have been avoided had he just drafted Steven Jackson in 2004? We will never know. And Jay Ratliff was a very solid contributor. And by the way, the 2005 Cowboys went 9-7. They missed the playoffs. And what people are forgetting is the Cowboys at one point were 7-3. They were 7-3 going into, I'm going to say, Halloween, into Thanksgiving. And they finished up 2-4 the rest of the way. They finished up 9-7. And they missed the playoffs 2 straight years. In the 2006 draft, the Cowboys, clearly needing help at maybe wide receiver, decides to draft at number 18 one Bobby Carpenter out of Ohio State University. Yes, that Bobby Carpenter. Now again, Bill Parcells has control over this team. He's drafting all the players. The picks who immediately went after Bobby Carpenter, again, Bobby Carpenter who really couldn't get on the field. Number 19 drafted was Antonio Cromartie. Could they have maybe needed help as cornerback? Because you already had Anthony Henry, who they signed as free agent. As a free agent, you still had Terrence Newman. Could they have drafted a Tom Bahali to play on the other side of one DeMarcus Ware? You have Jonathan Joseph, who went at number 24. So at number 19, the pick after Bobby Carpenter was Antonio Cromartie. All his kids be damned. Number 20 went Tom Bahali, who went to the Kansas City Chiefs. Number 24 was Jonathan Joseph, and the number 25 pick was Santonio Holmes out of the same Ohio State University team, who years later caught the game-winning catch in the Super Bowl. So now it makes you wonder, could the Cowboys now signing Terry Glenn, signing T.O., could they have maybe used a Santonio Holmes? Possibly. They still had a young Patrick Creighton. So maybe the Cowboys felt they didn't need help at wide receiver, but I didn't think that Bobby Carpenter was the pick to make. Round 2, number 53. They take tight end Anthony Fasano. Now, some can say it's a solid pick, but the problem was in round 1, number 28, the Jacksonville Jaguars selected one Mercedes Lewis. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, that Mercedes Lewis, who is still playing for the Green Bay Packers now, was drafted after Bobby Carpenter and was taken before the other tight end, Anthony Fasano. Let that sink in. That's a Bill Parcells drafted. Round number 3, in 92, they take one Jason Hatcher. Solid player. He played in one Pro Bowl. Round number 4, they took a wide receiver, Skylar Green, out of LSU. The problem was in round 4, there was a player named Elvis Dumerville, who they could have picked up, who we can make an argument was a better player than one Jason Hatcher. Round number 5, they selected a free safety, Pat Watkins, out of Florida State. However, in round 6, Antoine Bethea was drafted, and in round number 7, one Cortland Finnegan was drafted. Was taken instead of the Cowboys, or other teams instead of the Cowboys. Round number 7, Pat McQuistion out of Weber State, and E.J. Whitley. So again, the Cowboys under the Bill Parcells era, and yeah, they went to the playoffs. And as we have discussed before, I'm really trying to figure out what the hell was he doing in the 2006 wildcard game. They were on the road at Seattle. The Seattle Seahawks literally brought guys off the streets, including one, Pete Hunter, who was a Cowboy throwaway. And you have T.O., you have Terry Glenn, and he wanted to play his brand of football and didn't want to spread Seattle out and turn it into a track meet. In his mind, he wanted to play his brand of football. And I know people think about the Tony Romo bobble snap that cost him the game. But again, there were other things, namely Bill Parcells, and this style of coaching did not want to open things up because they really should have blew the doors off of Seattle. And I think the Seattle team barely escaped, snuck in the back door to get into the playoffs. And that snap, and they should have beat the hell out of Seattle, and Parcells ended up retiring. So, in Parcells' tenure with Dallas, 4 seasons, 2003, 4, 5, and 6. Got to the playoffs 2 out of the 4 years and did not win a single playoff game. Yes, he turned the team around, but guess what? He failed at the ultimate job to get the team to that type of championship prominence. And of course, I know Parcells is revered in the NFL for everything else that he did, but we're talking about this focus on just his tenure in Dallas. We felt is very, very average at best. Next point here. We feel that the 2006 Chicago Bears is one of the most underrated teams that played. And the reason why we say that, we were fans of that team. That squad went 13-3, lost in the Super Bowl to Peyton Manning and the Indianapolis Colts. That Bears defense led the league in turnovers and interceptions, second in recovered fumbles, tied for 8th with sacks, third in scoring defense, and 3 defensive touchdowns. That squad had Pro Bowlers: Brian Urlacher, Lance Briggs, Tommy Harris, and Brendan Ayanbadejo. Charles Peanut Tillman, he didn't even make the Pro Bowl that year. You also had Mark Anderson, who was a rookie, who had 12 sacks, and by the way, I hadn't even counted Devin Hester yet. That squad, those boys were bad. That defensive line had Israel Idonije, Alex Brown, Mark Anderson, Tank Johnson. They had a squad: Lance Briggs, Hunter Hillenmeyer, Brian Ayanbadejo, Nathan Vasher, Daniel Manning. I mean, they had Charles Tillman, Mike Brown. Thoroughbreds. I think had that team won the Super Bowl, they would have went down as one of the top teams ever. And I'm talking about their defense. They don't have the 85 Bears were on point when you look at their stats. The 2000 Ravens, the 2002 Bucks. I think that Bears team could have been right on par with the 2002 Buccaneers. A lot of star power, guys in the Hall of Fame. I think obviously Sapp's in the Hall of Fame, Brooks in the Hall of Fame, Ronnie Barber's up for the Hall of Fame. I mean, I think he should get some Hall of Fame votes. Simeon Rice, John Lynch in the Hall of Fame. That Bears team, Urlacher's in the Hall of Fame. The next person who should get in, which will lead us to the next point, is Lance Briggs. But that Bears squad of 2006, those boys were bad. That's the same Bears squad that the late Dennis Green in that famous press conference was like, if you want to crown them, then crown their ass, and they are who we thought they were. He was talking about that Bears team because during the preseason, the Arizona Cardinals kind of handed it to the Bears. And the Cardinals were winning that game, and I believe that was a Monday night game, I believe. And the Bears made a miraculous comeback really in the fourth quarter, and that's when Denny Green kind of got upset in the press conference. So that press conference was about that Bears team. And we feel, had they won the Super Bowl, would lead us into Rex Grossman. If he could handle snaps under center, the Bears should have won the Super Bowl that game. It's just that simple. The reason why, the first time ever and only time in history, Devin Hester runs the opening kickoff back for a touchdown, and he was a weapon of himself, and he is up for the Hall of Fame. And my good buddy, Mike McKnight, I know you're listening, he would actually put Devin Hester in his Hall of Fame, and no arguments with that. So you're spotted a 7-0 lead. The Bears also got turnovers as well. You're supposed to beat the Colts. If Rex Grossman can handle snaps under center, the Bears are winning that Super Bowl, and I think the 2006 Bears would be seen a little bit higher than what they were. I remember they played a great regular season game against the New England Patriots in New England. It was a great game, and really, again, Rex Grossman cost them that game against New England. So we give those Bears teams credit, and we feel that they're very underrated. And by the way, do you know who was the defensive coordinator of that Bears defense? Current Washington football team coach Ron Rivera, who was a member of the 85 Bears. Now, for some reason, I don't know what happened. Ron Rivera starts interviewing for head coaching positions. He's not retained by then head coach Lovie Smith. Goes to Carolina, and then he goes to Washington. But just a little bit of trivia for you, that Ron Rivera was the defensive coordinator of that Bears team. So definitely like digest. Folks, we are not done yet. We are not done yet. We think from a boxing standpoint that if you look at it from a mythical matchup standpoint, we think that Evander Holyfield could beat Muhammad Ali. Yes, we said it. And here's why. Now, I asked this question on Twitter. Does it make a difference if I was around to watch a fighter, like watch it live? So simply put, I was not alive when Muhammad Ali was fighting. Okay, I wasn't even born yet. But I have a lot of fights in our fight collection. A lot of fights in my collection. Does it change when I'm watching on video, when I watch the actual fighter fighting years later, or what if I watch them fight then? Does it make a difference? It's the same fight, same video, same everything. Yes, if I had a time machine, I would love to go back and be around and see what happened or what the atmosphere was like with Frazier Ali 1. That's probably one event I would love to have been around for. But with that being said, atmosphere, watching the fight on ESPN Classic or having it in action on videotape and making a sound decision about a fighter's strengths and weaknesses doesn't make a difference with me watching it on tape or watching it back then. I don't think it does. And I say that to say, if you're looking at a mythical matchup versus Evander Holyfield and Muhammad Ali, we would take Evander Holyfield over the late Muhammad Ali. And this is no knock on Ali. We're looking at it from a strictly fantasy standpoint. What do we mean by that? Let's take a look at styles. Could Ali intimidate Evander Holyfield? Could Ali get into Holyfield's head? I think the answer would be no. All of Ali's talking, I don't think that really would have made a difference. I think Holyfield himself is very headstrong. So getting into Frazier's head, getting into Sonny Liston's head, getting into Foreman's head, I don't think that would have happened against Evander Holyfield. So I think the psychological warfare, it wouldn't have mattered. Now, let's go to the end of the ring. Muhammad Ali was given fits by Joe Frazier and Ken Norton. I think Evander Holyfield is a better fighter than both of those guys. Evander Holyfield has an iron chin, and his work rate would have matched Ali. Now, yes, Ali might have been a better footwork, but if you look at Holyfield's losses against, especially talking about that young Evander Holyfield, let's go back to Riddick Bowe, a bigger fighter who can box, and Holyfield turned the tide in the rematch. You look at the Lennox Lewis fights, a bigger puncher. So Ali would not have knocked out one Evander Holyfield. I think Holyfield would have taken a fight to one Muhammad Ali. I think Evander Holyfield is a better inside fighter than Muhammad Ali was. For Muhammad Ali, a lot of his inside fighting was hooking the glove and wrapping one arm around a fighter's head and hoping the fighter would punch himself out, see the rope or that was his natural fighting style, okay, inside. Ali's strength was jabbing and movement. Now, we know when Holyfield gets hit, something instinctively wakes up in Holyfield to just go for the jugular, and that's what I thought that maybe he would have outworked Ali. Now I'm not saying he would even knock Ali out, but I'm saying he could have won enough rounds based on activity. But judging that fair and objective, he would have won enough rounds based on activity to defeat Muhammad Ali by a close decision. Again, the psychological warfare that Ali would have had in his favor, against other fighters, it wouldn't have placed here. I think Holyfield's natural instinct to get hit and want to respond and to really turn it into a rough and tumble fight, bang Ali to the body. I thought Holyfield was an excellent inside fighter, and I thought, believe it or not, had a very underrated jab and had underrated hooks on the inside. I think Holyfield would have been strong for Ali on the inside, and that's what I thought. And I think that Holyfield would do enough. I don't think Ali could have knocked Holyfield down or out, and vice versa, because Ali did have an excellent chin himself. So not taking anything away from Ali's chin. We're thinking from a stylistic matchup that Evander Holyfield could beat Muhammad Ali by close decision. Whether you agree, I know you don't want to criticize. No, I'm not going to say this. We live in a world now, if you don't if you say that this guy could beat this guy, or somebody could beat Ali, or somebody's better than Jordan, it's almost saying that sacrilegious. No, it's not. It's looking at it from an objective standpoint, and I've given you some of the reasons why we believe that Evander Holyfield could beat Muhammad Ali. We tend to think, why doesn't Kareem Abdul-Jabbar get more credit as the greatest of all time? You hear Michael Jordan, you hear LeBron James, you hear Magic Johnson, but Kareem Abdul-Jabbar has just as many titles as Michael, has the most points ever scored, had an unstoppable shot. And by the way, people say, well, Magic won a ring, when he came to Lakers, but Kareem already had a ring with the Milwaukee Bucks. So people tend to forget that part. So why doesn't Kareem Abdul-Jabbar get more talk as being the greatest of all time? Because the argument tends to shift a lot. Well, it's about rings, and why isn't it Bill Russell? Well, it's about dominance. Well, Kareem literally has been a dominant player since high school, since college, and even during his time in the NBA. Again, most points scored, had an unstoppable shot. Okay, the skyhook, you literally could not defend the damn skyhook. Has equal amount of rings, has MVPs, the most points scored, and yet he's underrated as the greatest of all time. You hear Michael, you hear Magic, you hear Kobe, you hear Shaq. But to be honest with you, the person who should be right up there with everyone is Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. So the conversation really should start with Kareem, maybe a Bill Russell, and Michael, and then we can start with everybody else. But Kareem should be right there in terms of the greatest players of all time. Ladies and gentlemen, this was fun. Let us know what you think. Please let us know what you think. You let us know which topics that you want us to cover. So, this is Chin Check Radio. Until the next time.